From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2449, this is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. Our top story is Hurricane Helene, which swept through the United States' southern states, bringing what's being called unprecedented tragedy. Amateur radio can be at its best when times are at their worst, and Randy Sly, W4XJ, shares an example of that in one area of hardest-hit North Carolina.
Since making landfall on the evening of September 26th, Hurricane Helene not only left a trail of devastation, but also produced thousands of acts of heroism, especially in the remote areas of the United States impacted by floodwaters. In addition to emergency personnel and first responders, those involved included helicopter pilots, teams with pack mules, and other volunteers, including hams providing emergency communications. Examples of life-saving communication could be heard around the clock on the W4HTP repeater at Mount Mitchell, North Carolina. On Saturday morning, September 28th, Dan Gittro, K2DMG, was in his ham shack and knew that the area was experiencing heavy rains. He got on the W4HTP repeater, which was surprisingly not busy, put out his call to see if anyone needed assistance, and immediately received a number of responses from hams in the flooded areas. Since that time, he and the other net controls handled hundreds of health and welfare calls, maintaining continuous communications with the areas of western North Carolina most seriously affected. Hurricane Helene produced a path of destruction for nearly 800 miles from Florida's Big Bend to Asheville, North Carolina, and farther north, leaving over 180 dead and hundreds more missing. The aftermath of this Category 4 hurricane brought floodwaters of historic proportions and spawned more than 50 tornadoes in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, the Carolinas, and nearby states. This is Randy Sly, W4XJ.
As Major Hurricane Milton takes aim at the Florida Gulf Coast, Newsline will be monitoring the ham radio activity. In the world of amateur radio satellites, a major milestone has been reached.
The International Amateur Radio Union, which coordinates the radio frequencies used by ham radio satellites, announced that it recently processed request number 1,000 for a satellite frequency. The IARU's Satellite Frequency Coordination Panel has faced new challenges in recent years with the increasing popularity and growth of CubeSats. With less onerous costs to launch these small satellites, the focus has been on carefully managing the spectrum and ensuring minimal interference with terrestrial services. The IARU issued a statement saying, quote, "As Earth's orbit becomes more crowded, the IARU's work in frequency coordination will remain critical for future missions," end quote.
Newsline anchor Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG. And in Puerto Rico, the site where the iconic Arecibo radio telescope once stood is being readied for a new role in the world of science.
Arecibo C3, the U.S. National Science Foundation's Educational Science Center, is preparing a full opening soon at the site where the legendary Arecibo Observatory reigned until damages suffered in 2020 compelled the radio telescope's dismantling. The new facility in Puerto Rico is formerly known as the NSF Arecibo Center for Culturally Relevant and Inclusive Science Education, Computational Skills, and Community Engagement. According to its website, the center is building on the legacy of the radio telescope, serving as an epicenter of STEM education research and skill building. Conferences, meetings, and workshops will be held there, along with public science programs. An assistant director of the Science Foundation, James L. Moore III, said in a public statement that the center will embrace all ranges of science, from astronomy and radio science to biology, computer science, and natural science. Students and educators visited the center this past summer to attend some of the programs that were launched on a pilot basis. This is Andy Morrison, K9 AWM.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news since 1976 at arnewsline.org. With Randy Sly, W4XJ, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, Andy Morrison, K9AWM, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wellbanks, AE5DW. 7-3, we'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.